Dawn breaks over the Reich Chancellery as Fritz Todt adjusts his spectacles, examining blueprints spread across his mahogany desk. Outside, Berlin awakens, unaware that the decisions made in this quiet office will reshape Europe's landscape. Each pencil stroke represents thousands of workers, tons of concrete, and lives that will be forever altered. Todt's hands, steady, calculated, bear the weight of the Führer's ambitions and the Reich's industrial might. His pocket watch ticks methodically, like the heartbeat of the vast construction network he commands. He pauses, a moment of hesitation before signing the authorization for another impossible deadline. What ghosts haunt the conscience of the man who builds the arteries through which war flows? The brass alarm clock rings at precisely 5:15 a.m. Fritz Todt silences it with a practiced motion, the same motion he's used every morning for 20 years. His wife Elsa stirs but doesn't wake. She's accustomed to his schedule. In the bathroom, his shaving kit awaits, arranged in perfect order. The straight razor glides with mechanical precision. A small nick forms below his ear. He dabs it with a handkerchief, frowning at the imperfection. The Russians have been pushed back another 15 kilometers, near Smolensk, the radio announces as he buttons his pressed uniform. The news brings no visible reaction to his face. The telephone rings. Elsa appears in her robe, handing him the receiver. Ja, Todt speaking. Herr Minister, the concrete pour at Sector 12 failed structural tests. I'll address it at headquarters. Prepare the full data. Elsa sets breakfast: black bread, a boiled egg, weak coffee, war rations, even for a Reich minister. His leather document case sits by his chair, bulging with papers marked streng geheim. Top secret. Will you be late again? Elsa asks, her voice neutral. Most likely. The Führer expects updates on the Atlantic defenses. A pause hangs between them. Once they discussed his work freely, now they speak in generalities. Karl wrote again, she says, sliding the letter across the table. He's requesting permission to apply for officer training. Todt's hand freezes mid-air. Their 17-year-old son eager to join the cause. I'll speak to him about technical corps positions. Germany needs engineers more than infantry officers. The telephone interrupts again. His driver has arrived early. The meeting has been moved forward, he tells Elsa, collecting his case. Hitler is impatient for results. She helps him with his coat, a domestic ritual preserved from simpler times. Their fingers touch briefly. Be careful, Fritz. He nods, uncertain if she means with the Führer or with his soul. Outside, his Mercedes waits, a luxury few can afford in fuel-rationed Berlin. His driver, Schmidt, stands at attention. Guten Morgen, Herr Minister. To headquarters. Quickly. Berlin passes by the window, buildings bearing fresh propaganda posters, women queuing for bread, crews repairing bomb damage from last week's raid. Schmidt navigates around a detour where workers clear rubble. British bombing becomes more accurate, Todt observes. Yes, sir, my sister lost her apartment building 2 nights ago. Todt nods but offers no condolences. Personal tragedies multiply too quickly now. He opens his document case, reviewing notes for the morning's meetings. Production quotas, material shortages, labor allocations. The language is technical, sterile, no mention of the thousands of conscripted workers who die weekly on his projects. The pocket watch in his vest ticks steadily. 20 years ago, he was an unknown civil engineer, passionate about road building. The Autobahn project caught Hitler's attention, launching his rise. Now he commands the entire construction apparatus of the Reich. The car passes a construction site where his organization taught workers labor. The Germans supervise, the foreign laborers, Poles, French, Russians perform the dangerous work. Todt watches a group struggling with a concrete form. Their movements are sluggish. Hunger slows efficiency. Schmidt, make a note. Sector 7 workers appear undernourished. Productivity will suffer. Shall I report it to the camp administrators, sir? Todt considers. No. I'll address it through proper channels. The Mercedes approaches the ministry building, its facade adorned with swastika banners. Guards snap to attention. Todt straightens his uniform, checks his watch one final time. His private face, husband, father, human, disappears behind the mask of Reich Minister of Armaments and Munitions. The document case in his hand will direct the fate of millions today. He steps from the car into the machinery of the Reich, another cog in the vast apparatus of war. Uniformed guards salute as Todt enters the ministry building. His secretary, Fräulein Hoffmann, intercepts him in the corridor, clipboard in hand. She matches his brisk pace while briefing him. The Material Allocation Committee at 9. Atlantic Wall Engineers at 10. Speer's office called 3 times about the concrete allotment. Todt nods, making no comment about Albert Speer's persistence. The architect has Hitler's ear lately. "Coffee, Herr Minister?" she asks, taking his hat. "Ja." His office is a testament to Germanic efficiency, maps on every wall, production charts updated hourly. Behind his desk hangs his framed engineering degree from Munich Technical University, class of 1923. First in his class, Fräulein Hoffmann returns with coffee and the day's urgent files. General Fromm requests immediate response regarding bunker reinforcements. "Tell him when I have proper stress calculations, not before. The Führer doesn't need another collapse." She nods and retreats. Through the window, Todt watches workers raising a flag on the ministry roof. He straightens a pencil on his desk, aligning it perfectly with his blotter's edge. A knock at the door. Enter. 4 project managers file in, each carrying blueprints. They stand stiffly at attention. "Sit," Todt orders. "Report on Sector 6. The oldest manager, Miller, unrolls coastal defense plans. "We've encountered water table issues at these gun emplacement sites." Todt studies the drawings, tracing a finger along elevation marks. "You've miscalculated the drainage requirements. Show me the soil samples." The men exchange nervous glances. "We haven't completed comprehensive sampling, Herr Minister." "The schedule is worthless without proper engineering." Todt interrupts. "You propose to build fortifications that may be compromised by the first heavy rain." He takes a pencil, rapidly sketching modifications. The managers watch in respectful silence as he solves in minutes what their teams debated for weeks. "Implement these changes immediately and conduct proper sampling." "Sir, General Rundstedt's office insists the current timeline be maintained." "The general doesn't understand basic physics, Miller. Would he prefer quick fortifications that fail or slightly delayed ones that function?" The question hangs rhetorically. Everyone knows military demands supersede engineering reality. The door opens without a knock. Albert Speer enters, elegant in his tailored suit. Unlike Todt's functional attire, Speer dresses to impress. "Fritz, I hope to catch you before the day's circus begins." Todt gestures for his managers to leave. They gather their blueprints, saluting before departing. Speer takes a seat without invitation. "Your concrete allocations are strangling my projects," Speer says without preamble. The Führer expects the new Reich Chancellery wing completed by spring. Todt's expression doesn't change. Defense fortifications take priority over administrative buildings. The Führer himself confirmed this last week. He seems to have reconsidered after viewing my new models. Speer's smile suggests private conversations Todt wasn't privy to. "I'll review the allocations when engineering priorities permit." "Of course," Speer rises. "I wouldn't dream of compromising military necessity. I simply convey the Führer's artistic vision." After Speer leaves, Todt stares at his engineering degree. He remembers Professor Kleinmann's ethics lectures. Engineering serves humanity, improves lives. How distant those ideals seem now. Fräulein Hoffmann announces the Atlantic Wall engineering team. 5 men enter, carrying coastal maps and material requisitions. "The British have been probing defences near Calais," the lead engineer reports. Our concrete thickness calculations assumed conventional naval artillery, but intelligence suggests they're developing bunker-buster munitions. Todt examines the specification. Double the reinforcement here and here. He marks critical sections and increase depth at these gun emplacements. We don't have the materials for such modifications across all sectors. Prioritize the most strategically valuable positions. And labor. We've lost nearly 8% of workers at northern sites in the past month. The room goes quiet. Everyone understands what lost means. Exhaustion, starvation, punishment. Submit a requisition for replacements through proper channels, Todt replies, his voice mechanical, and conduct efficiency studies at all sites. We must increase output per worker. A flash of memory, his first major project, 1934, the workers volunteering overtime, proud to rebuild Germany's infrastructure. He had known their names then, shook their hands at completion ceremonies. Anything else? He asks, pushing the memory away. No, Herr Minister. Then execute your orders promptly. The Reich depends on proper execution. As they file out, Todt turns to the production charts. Numbers, tonnages, deadlines. Nowhere do they record the human cost of his engineering triumphs. The red telephone on Todt's desk rings with a distinctive tone. Not the standard black phone for ministry business. This line connects directly to Hitler's personal office. Todt's hand hesitates momentarily before lifting the receiver. Todt speaks. The Führer demands your immediate report on Eastern Front road progress, says a clipped voice. He will speak with you in 3 minutes. Todt opens his Eastern Sector folder with practiced efficiency. His mind races, calculating what Hitler will want to hear versus the actual reality of construction progress. 3 minutes to reconcile the unbridgeable gap between the Führer's expectations and physical possibility. Fräulein Hoffmann appears at the door, sensing the tension. She knows what the red phone means. Cancel my next appointment, Todt instructs, and bring the latest materials allocation charts. She returns swiftly with the documents, placing them precisely on his desk. Her face betrays nothing, but she straightens his uniform collar before departing, a small humanizing gesture before he faces the tempest. The telephone rings again. Todt takes a deep breath and answers. Mein Führer. Todt, the Panzer divisions report impassable conditions near Kharkov. Your roads are failing under artillery fire. Explain this failure. Todt winces at Hitler's tone, the familiar combination of accusation and disappointment. Mein Führer, the roads were designed for supply transport, not as military hardpoints. Artillery bombardment exceeds their design specifications. Specifications? Our soldiers die in mud, while you speak of specifications. Todt's jaw tightens. We are implementing reinforced designs in critical sectors. The weather and Soviet scorched earth policy have complicated. I don't want complications. I want results. Hitler's voice escalates. Double your labor force. The spring offensive cannot be delayed. Labor is already at maximum capacity, mein Führer. We've requisitioned every available worker from occupied territories. A dangerous pause follows. There are more workers available, Todt. Speak with Himmler about special transports from Poland. The implication hangs in the air. Todt knows what special transports mean. Job all, mein Führer. I will coordinate with Reichsführer, Himmler. Good. Now, the Atlantic defenses. Rommel reports inadequate concrete thickness at Normandy bunkers. We prioritized areas intelligence identified as likely invasion points, Calais and Pas-de-Calais. Intelligence can be wrong. Fortify all sectors equally. Mein Führer, material shortages make that impossible. We must strategically allocate. Nothing is impossible for the Reich. Your organization bears my personal trust, Todt. Do not disappoint me with defeatist assessments. Todt swallows his engineering objections. We will redouble efforts, mein Führer. One more matter. The special facilities in Poland, are they receiving adequate construction priority? Todt's hand tightens on the receiver. The special facilities concentration camps being expanded for purposes beyond mere detention. Construction proceeds according to SS specifications, he answers neutrally. Accelerate them. History will judge us on our resolution in solving all of Germany's problems. Jawohl, mein Führer, I expect your full written report tonight. Heil Hitler. Heil Hitler. The line goes dead. Todt places the receiver down with exacting precision. For several moments he sits motionless, staring at the red telephone. Then he opens his drawer and removes a bottle of pills, medication for his worsening heart condition. Fräulein Hoffmann enters with a glass of water, anticipating his need. Shall I reschedule the afternoon inspections, Herr Minister? No. Todt swallows a pill, but contact Reichsführer Himmler's office. Request a meeting regarding labor allocations. At once, Herr Minister. When she departs, Todt moves to the window. Outside, Berlin continues its wartime bustle, the ceaseless machinery of the Reich. He presses his forehead against the cool glass. In his reflection, he studies his own face. The lined forehead, the tired eyes behind steel-rimmed glasses. When did he become this man? This functionary who speaks of human beings as labor allocations. The intercom buzzes. Deputy Minister Weber requests approval for the revised material transport schedules. Todt straightens, adjusts his uniform. The moment of doubt passes, or rather is suppressed, buried beneath the weight of duty and daily operations. Send him in. He returns to his desk, assumes the posture of authority. The mask of the Reich minister settles back into place, hiding the momentary glimpse of the troubled man beneath. Todt's black Mercedes glides through Berlin's streets. Part of a small motorcade. 2 military vehicles escort him, a reminder of his importance to the Reich. He sits in the back seat, reviewing documents as the city gives way to the outskirts, where new defensive positions are being constructed. Captain Hoffmann, his military liaison for the day, points toward the horizons. Flak Tower construction is progressing well, Herr Minister. The local Gauleiter has prioritized materials. Todt raises his field binoculars, examining the distant structure. The southeastern corner shows poor alignment. Make a note. The captain scribbles in his note. The workers have been on 16-hour shifts to meet deadlines. Efficiency decreases after 10 hours, Todt replies. Basic industrial management. The motorcade turns onto a muddy access road. Workers scramble to attention as the vehicles approach. Most wear the blue uniforms of organization Todt, but among them are gaunt figures in striped clothing, concentration camp prisoners allocated for labor. Todt steps from the car, boots sinking slightly in the mud. A German foreman rushes forward, saluting. Herr Minister, we had no notification of your inspection. That was intentional, Miller. Todt adjusts his gloves. Show me the reinforcement work on the western bunker. The foreman leads him across the construction site. Regular workers snap to attention while the prisoners keep their eyes downcast. Todt walks past them as if they were merely another type of equipment. The concrete setting has been complicated by recent temperature fluctuations, Miller explains, leading him to an enormous bunker emerging from the earth. We've increased the aggregate ratio to compensate. Todt runs his hand along the wall, feeling for inconsistencies. You've used too much sand. The compression strength will be compromised. Material shortages forced adjustments, Herr Minister. Shortages do not justify poor engineering. Todt's voice remains calm but cuts like steel. Rebuild this section. But Herr Minister, our deadlines will not matter when artillery collapses this wall. Behind them a sudden commotion erupts. A prisoner has collapsed while carrying a cement bag. The contents spill across the mud. Guards shout, moving toward the fallen man. Todt observes the scene through his binoculars, his expression unchanged. Captain Hoffmann steps closer. Shall I have them remove the disruption, Herr Minister? Todt lowers the binoculars. Through their lenses, he had seen the man's face, hollow cheeks, eyes like empty sockets, French perhaps, or Dutch. No, Todt says finally. Cement wastage costs the Reich more than brief medical attention. He turns to the foreman. Your workers appear undernourished. Efficiency calculations indicate optimal productivity requires 2,200 calories daily for manual labor. Miller shifts uncomfortably. SS ration allocations for the prisoners are set centrally. Herr Minister, Todt continues, as if discussing an engineering problem. I'll authorize a 10% increase in protein rations for this site. Document it as necessary for meeting critical defense deadlines. A nearby officer stiffens. Sir, camp regulations are not my concern, Todt interrupts. Construction efficiency, make the appropriate arrangements, Captain Hoffman. Jawohl, Herr Minister. Todt returns to the bunker inspection, measuring wall thickness with calipers from his pocket. The specifications called for 40 centimeters here. This is barely 30. We're conserving materials as ordered by Central Command, the foreman explains, and creating death traps for our soldiers. Todt makes another note. Redirect materials from decorative elements at the command buildings. Function takes precedence over appearance. For an hour, Todt methodically examines every aspect of construction. His technical knowledge intimidates the site managers. He finds 12 deficiencies, orders 3 sections demolished and rebuilt. As the inspection concludes, Todt pauses near the prisoner work crew. They avoid eye contact, shoulders hunched in perpetual deference. Among them stands a man who might once have been an engineer or architect. Something in his bearing suggests education. For a brief moment, their eyes meet. A flicker of professional recognition passes between them. Two technical minds acknowledging each other across an unbridgeable divide. Todt turns away first. Schedule the ration increase, immediately, he tells Captain Hoffman quietly. Is that politically wise, Herr Minister? Todt adjusts his gloves again, a nervous habit. It's not politics, it's efficiency. As he returns to his car, Todt glances back at the prisoner. The man has already returned to work, knowing better than to be caught looking at a Reich minister. The motorcade departs, leaving the site in renewed activity. Through the rear window, Todt watches the towers recede into the distance, monuments to German engineering, and something else, something that history would judge differently than the brilliance of their design. The Hotel Adlon's private dining room maintains a pre-war elegance that belies Berlin's growing privations. White tablecloths, silver service, crystal glasses, all preserved for the Reich's leadership, while ordinary Germans face increasing rationing. Todt arrives precisely at 30. Lauber, Gruppenführer Paul, is already seated, his black uniform stark against the room's warm colors. Beside him sits Dr. Sauer, the Labor Ministry representative. They rise as Todt enters. Herr Minister, Paul says, extending his hand. Punctual as German artillery, Todt shakes hands mechanically. Gentlemen, a waiter appears with champagne. Todt waves it away, requesting water instead. I find alcohol impedes technical clarity. All work, even at lunch, Paul smiles, his SS Death's Head, insignia gleaming under the chandelier light. This is why the Führer values you so highly. Menus appear, special ones without prices, listing delicacies unavailable to the public. Todt selects the simplest option, while Paul orders extravagantly. To our victory in the East, Paul raises his glass. Todt acknowledges with a nod. Shall we address the labor allocation issues? Dr. Sauer opens his briefcase. We've prepared new procurement figures from occupied territories. Procurement, Todt repeats, tasting the euphemism. 10,000 from France last month. Sauer continues. 8,000 from Poland, 6 from the Netherlands. And their skill levels? Todt asks. Mostly unskilled, Paul interjects. Though we are identifying those with technical training for your special projects. The first course arrives, a meat pâté that Todt recognizes genuine pre-war quality. He eats methodically, without pleasure. The mortality rates at northern construction sites remain problematic. Todt says between bites. We lose skilled workers faster than they can be replaced. Paul shrugs. Replacements are plentiful. Efficiency is compromised by constant replacement. Training costs time. Perhaps, Sauer suggests, We could implement improved shelter at critical sites, purely for productivity purposes. Out of the question, Paul responds sharply. The Reichsführer SS has made clear that comfort standards encourage laziness. A young waiter serves the main course, real beef, when most Germans haven't seen meat for months. The waiter's hand trembles slightly as he sets down Todt's plate. "Careful, boy," Todt says quietly. "Apologies, Herr Minister." The waiter has a familiar look, the same age as Todt's son, with similar earnest features. "Your son is at the front, I believe?" Paul asks, cutting into his steak. "Studying engineering," Todt corrects. "The Reichs needs technical expertise. Noble. But the Wehrmacht needs strong young men first. My own son joined the Waffen-SS last year." Todt changes the subject. "The Atlantic Wall concrete allocations remain insufficient. The military demands specifications that material shortages make impossible. Perhaps," Paul suggests, "we should reconsider our approach to the Russian prisoners. Their life expectancy in the current system is only months. If we extended it to a year through minimal adjustments, the productivity gain would offset any resource expenditure." Todt nods, recognizing the calculated coldness disguised as efficiency. He uses his silver cigarette case, a gift from Goering, as a momentary distraction, offering cigarettes. Paul accepts, Sauer declines. A logical approach. Todt responds, "I'll prepare a productivity analysis." "Always the engineer," Paul laughs. "This is why we work well together, Todt. No messy ideological debates, just German efficiency." The waiter returns to clear plates. Todt notices a small gold pin partially hidden on the inside of his collar. A university insignia. "Where did you study?" Todt asks, unexpectedly. The waiter freezes. "Engineering at Dresden, Herr Minister." Before the war interrupted, Todt finishes for him. A worthy discipline. Paul watches the exchange with cold amusement. "Your sentimentality for technicians, Todt. One might mistake it for softness." Todt's face hardens. "Germany's future will be built by engineers, not dismantled by them." An uncomfortable silence follows. "Speaking of building," Sauer interjects diplomatically, "the new underground factory allocation has created tensions with the military." The conversation returns to familiar territory: resource disputes, jurisdictional conflicts, production quotas. Todt participates with technical precision, offering solutions, navigating competing demands. Dessert arrives, real chocolate pudding, another pre-war luxury. "Before we conclude," Paul says, "Reichsführer Himmler asked me to personally extend an invitation. He's conducting an inspection of the new facilities near Lublin next month. Your expertise would be valuable." Todt understands what isn't being said. The facilities are death camps. "My schedule is determined by the Führer's priorities," he responds neutrally. "Please convey my thanks to Reichsführer Himmler." The lunch concludes with polite formalities. As they leave, Todt discreetly places his untouched chocolate pudding beside the young waiter's station. Walking to his car, Todt feels the weight of the silver cigarette case in his pocket, a small link in the chain binding him to the regime he serves. Back in his office, Todt removes his jacket and rolls up his sleeves. A transformation from Reich Minister to working engineer. His custom drafting tools lie in their leather case, each instrument precisely placed. He opens the case with reverent familiarity. Fräulein Hoffmann enters. "The Eastern Front Transportation Division is assembled. Herr Minister, send them in." 3 engineers enter, carrying large tubes of blueprints. The youngest, Weber, can't be more than 25, too valuable as an engineer to be conscripted. "The supply route expansions, Herr Minister," the senior engineer Brandt announces. "For your final approval." They unroll the massive blueprints across Todt's conference table. Weighted markers hold down the corners. The plans show hundreds of kilometers of roadways, spanning from Warsaw deep into Ukraine, the arteries of German conquest. Todt takes his favorite compass from the drafting set. "Show me the drainage systems for the Dnieper crossing." The engineers indicate the relevant sections. Todt leans over the plans, his entire demeanor changing. Here, examining technical challenges, he finds familiar ground problems with concrete solutions, unburdened by moral complexities. The elevation calculations here are insufficient, Todt notes, marking the blueprint with a red pencil. Spring flooding will wash out this entire section. Sir, military command insisted on the direct route. Brandt explains. Physics doesn't yield to military command, Todt replies dryly. The young engineer, Weber, clears his throat nervously. Herr Minister, I've developed an alternative approach. He unrolls a smaller blueprint. If we elevate this section and incorporate these culvert designs, we can maintain the direct route while ensuring stability during spring thaws. Todt examines Weber's proposal with genuine interest. Innovative solution. Where did you study? Berlin Technical University, sir. I specialized in civil engineering under Professor Hoffmann, my former colleague. Todt allows himself a small smile. He taught practical problem solving, not just theory. For several minutes, Todt loses himself in the technical discussion, suggesting refinements to Weber's design. His hands move with practiced precision across the blueprints, making annotations. This is Todt in his element, the engineer, not the Nazi official. The telephone interrupts their work. Fräulein Hoffmann answers, then approaches Todt. Urgent call from the Eastern Front Command. Herr Minister, Russian artillery has destroyed the Zhytomyr supply bridge. The room falls silent. That bridge was one of Todt's personal design projects. Casualties, Todt asks. 17 organization, Todt personnel, 43 laborers, unknown military losses. Todt returns to the blueprints, his face betraying no emotion. We'll need to implement contingency route B7 immediately. Weber, recalculate material requirements. The young engineer moves to a side table, working quickly with a slide rule. Todt examines the alternative route, measuring distances with his drafting compass. The fuel consumption will increase by 22% on this route, Brandt notes. Unavoidable. Priority is maintaining supply continuity. Todt marks new construction sectors. We'll need to relocate 3 labor battalions from the Atlantic Wall project. Sir, the third engineer interjects. Concrete shortages are already critical for defensive structures. Then we'll use local materials, stone foundations with minimal concrete reinforcement. Todt sketches rapidly. Not ideal but functional for the interim. For the next hour, they reconfigure the entire transportation network, adapting to the new reality. Todt works methodically, his mind transforming destruction into opportunity for improved design. As they finalize the revised plans, Fräulein Hoffmann interrupts again. Your wife on the telephone, Herr Minister. Todt hesitates. Tell her I'll call back. She says your son is on leave from university. He's at home for dinner. Something flickers across Todt's face, a reminder of life beyond blueprints and war logistics. Give me the telephone. The engineers discreetly step away as Todt takes the receiver. Else, yes. Unexpected developments. I'll try to be home by 8. He listens. No, don't wait if I'm delayed. Tell Carl He pauses. Tell him I look forward to discussing his studies. He replaces the receiver and turns back to the blueprints. Where were we, gentlemen? Weber points to a river crossing. Sir, about the bridge reinforcements. Yes, the reinforcements. Todt refocuses on the technical challenge, but his hand strays to his pocket watch. For a brief moment, his eyes reflect a silent calculation, not of material requirements or load-bearing capacities, but of a father's dwindling time with his son, weighed against a Reich minister's obligations. The moment passes. Todt's drafting compass traces another precise arc across the map of conquered territory, marking where German efficiency will overcome Russian destruction. The conference room fills with cigarette smoke as 7 men in various uniforms arrange papers on the long table. Todt enters last, carrying a slim leather portfolio and a small, worn book, a multilingual phrase guide, its pages marked with colored tabs. Gentleman Todt begins without preamble, the labor allocation report. Colonel Dorsch, Todt's deputy for workforce management, current deployment is at 1.8 million workers across all organization Todt projects. Approximately 70% are non-German. Charts are distributed showing nationality breakdowns: French, Dutch, Belgian, Polish, Russian. Color-coded categories distinguish between civilian conscripts and concentration camp prisoners. Mortality rates by sector. Todt requests. Dorsch hesitates. Atlantic Wall projects show 12% monthly losses. Eastern Front projects, approximately 22%. Unsustainable, Todt observes, making notations, particularly for skilled positions. SS Sturmbannführer Keller interjects. Replacements continue to arrive from the occupied territories. Replacements require training, Todt counters. Production efficiency decreases with every worker lost. He opens his phrasebook to a section marked French, studies it momentarily, then returns to his notes. The gesture doesn't escape Keller's notice. You still speak directly to the foreign workers, Herr Minister. When necessary, Todt replies. Technical instructions often require precision. A risky practice, Keller suggests. Familiarity undermines proper discipline. Todt ignores the comment. The concrete setting failures at Normandy sites correlate directly with inadequate shelter provisions. Workers exposed to winter conditions without proper recovery periods cannot maintain quality standards. Major Schuster, from Military Liaison, shrugs. They're mostly sabotaging the work anyway. Yesterday we caught 3 Frenchmen deliberately weakening a bunker foundation. They were executed, Keller asks. Naturally, Todt's pencil pauses over his notes. And the bunker foundation? Had to be completely rebuilt, Schuster admits. So we lost both the workers and weeks of construction time. Todt's voice remains clinical. Inefficient on all counts. He rises, moving to the window. Outside, Berlin carries on, women shopping with ration cards. Children in Hitler Youth uniforms marching to an activity. A normal day in the abnormal world of the Third Reich. 8 years ago, Todt says quietly, I built the first Autobahn sections with German workers. Volunteers, many previously unemployed. They took pride in their work. Quality was exceptional. The room falls silent at this unexpected reminiscence. The difference was motivation, Todt continues. They worked for Germany's future, not under threat of punishment. Keller's eyes narrow. Herr Minister, surely you're not suggesting we cannot maintain proper standards with the current labor system? Todt turns back to face the table. I'm stating an engineering observation. Motivated workers produce better results than those working solely from fear. These are enemies of the Reich, Keller reminds him. Their motivation is irrelevant. Their output is not. Todt returns to his seat. I am implementing new protocols at critical sites. Basic shelter improvements, ration adjustments for high-skilled workers, medical attention for recoverable conditions. The SS will object, Keller warns. The SS doesn't answer to the Führer for construction deadlines. I do. Todt's voice hardened. These measures will be documented as essential for meeting production requirements. He opens a folder containing photographs of emaciated workers attempting to lift concrete forms. This is from the Pas de Calais sector last week. Each worker pictured was dead within 3 days. The forms were never properly placed. The bunker remains unfinished. The room falls uncomfortably silent. Colonel Dorsch, prepare a comprehensive health assessment for all Atlantic Wall labor units. Major Schuster, draft requisitions for additional shelter materials and rations, categorized as critical construction supplies. Both men nod, avoiding Keller's glare. One last matter. Todt continues. Site 27 near Lublin has reported unusually high mortality, even by Eastern standards. 40% losses in 1 week. Keller shifts in his seat. That facility falls under SS jurisdiction. The construction supports special operations. All construction falls under my jurisdiction by direct order of the Führer. Todt responds coolly. I want a detailed report on Site 27 by tomorrow morning. Impossible, Keller objects. Those are restricted facilities. Then get me authorization. Todt closes his portfolio with finality. This meeting is concluded. As the officers file out, Dorsch remains behind. Fritz, he says quietly, using Todt's first name now that they're alone. Challenging the SS on the camp projects is dangerous territory. Todt picks up his phrasebook, running his thumb along its worn edges. I'm not challenging their operations, only their construction inefficiencies, a fine distinction they may not appreciate. Todt places the phrasebook carefully in his pocket. Have my car ready in 20 minutes. I want to visit the French labor barracks at the Flak Tower site. That's not on your schedule. It is now, Todt replies, already reviewing the relevant French phrases in his mind. Wait here, Todt instructs his driver, stepping out of the Mercedes. If anyone inquires, I'm conducting a materials inspection at the ministry warehouse. Jawohl, Herr Minister. The driver looks uncertain, but knows better than to question orders. Todt has exchanged his uniform jacket for a plain overcoat. Without the distinctive insignia of his rank, he appears as just another German official, important enough to move freely, but not immediately recognizable. The labor camp adjoins the northern Berlin Flak Tower construction site. No imposing concentration camp architecture here, just hastily erected wooden barracks surrounded by guard towers and barbed wire. The sign reads simply Foreign Worker Housing Facility. At the gate, a young guard snaps to attention, recognizing the Mercedes but confused by Todt's civilian appearance. Identification, please. Todt reduces his papers. The guard's eyes widen. Herr Minister, we had no notification of an inspection. That was intentional. Carry on with regular procedures. Inside the compound, the contrast with his morning's official tour is stark. No scrambling officials, no rehearsed presentations, just the unvarnished reality of the Reich's labor system. Workers in tattered clothes shuffle between barracks and work areas. Guards watch with casual indifference. Todt approaches a barracks building, nodding to the guard who hurriedly opens the door. The stench hits him first. Unwashed bodies, inadequate sanitation, sickness. Men lie on bare wooden bunks, stacked 3 high. Most appear to be French or Belgian by their features. They regard Todt with empty expressions, too weary for curiosity about this unexpected visitor. Water provision, Todt asks the guard. 20 liters per barracks per day, as per regulations. Todt makes a mental calculation. 40 men at half a liter each. Insufficient for hydration in manual laborers, particularly with dysentery present. He indicates several men with the telltale signs of illness. Medical supplies, the guard shrugs. Weekly distribution from Central Command. Todt continues through the barracks, his engineer's eye cataloging deficiencies. Roof leaks that soak sleeping areas, inadequate ventilation, fire hazards from improvised heating devices. In the corner, a small group huddles around a man sketching something on a scrap of paper. They scatter as Todt approaches, but not before he glimpses the drawing, an elegantly rendered bridge support structure. You, Todt addresses the man with the pencil. Your profession? The prisoner rises cautiously. Engineer, monsieur. Bridges and roadways. From Lee. Todt switches to halting French from his phrasebook. You work on site now? Oui, monsieur. Section 5, concrete pouring. A waste of your training, Todt observes, reverting to German. The French engineer studies Todt's face, recognizing something. You are an engineer also. Before Todt can respond, shouting erupts outside. Through the window he sees a camp officer approaching with 2 guards. Herr Minister, the camp commander calls out upon entering, having clearly been alerted to Todt's presence. This is an unexpected honor. Had we known of your visit, then I would have seen a very different camp. Todt finishes coldly. That's precisely why I came unannounced. The commander's smile falters. We follow all prescribed protocols for worker maintenance and achieve a 30% productivity rate compared to properly maintained German workers. Todt counters. Fiscally irresponsible. He turns to the French engineer. This man has bridge design experience. Why is he pouring concrete? We assign workers where needed. Herr Minister's skills are not always. Reassign him to the technical office immediately. Check all barracks for similar misallocated skills. Todt makes notes in his small notebook. And increase water ration to 2 liters per man per day. Sir, regulations specify. I write the regulations for organization Todt facilities. Todt interrupts. Effective immediately, this camp will implement revised standards. The commander's face darkens. Herr Minister, with respect, worker provisions fall under SS jurisdiction. Construction efficiency falls under mine. Todt's voice remains level, but carries unmistakable authority. The Führer has made deadlines for the flak towers absolute. Current worker condition jeopardizes those deadlines. He turns to leave, then pauses beside the French engineer. Pont à la Concorde, he says quietly. Beautiful counter-stress design. A flicker of professional pride crosses the Frenchman's gaunt face. You know it. I studied it at university. Excellent use of material distribution principles. For a brief moment, they are not Nazi and prisoner, just 2 engineers acknowledging craft across national boundaries. Then reality reasserts itself. Ensure this man receives proper drafting materials. Todt instructs the commander. I expect to see his expertise properly utilized within 24 hours. Outside, Todt walks briskly to his waiting car. His face betrays nothing, but his mind calculates the risks of what he's just done. The small rebellion packaged as efficiency, the humanity disguised as pragmatism. Back to headquarters, he tells his driver. As the Mercedes pulls away, Todt glances back at the camp through the rear window. In the engineering compromise between what is right and what is possible, he has managed only the smallest adjustment to an immense wrong. Albert Speer waits in Todt's office, examining the engineering awards on the wall. He turns as Todt enters, offering a practiced smile that doesn't reach his eyes. Fritz, thank you for making time. I brought something you might appreciate. On Todt's desk sits an architectural model, a massive concrete structure with distinctly classical elements garked awkwardly onto its functional form. The new flak tower for the Tiergarten, Speer explains proudly. The Führer approved my design modifications this morning. Todt studies the model with an engineer's critical eye. The decorative columns reduce interior space by 18%. Beauty has practical value too, Fritz. Speer runs his hand lovingly over the model. These structures will remain after the war as monuments to our era. If they survive Russian artillery, Todt observes dryly, the eastern pediment creates a structural weakness. Speer's smile tightens. At 40, he's a decade younger than Todt, handsome where Todt is plain, charming where Todt is blunt. The architect has become Hitler's favorite artistic confidant, challenging Todt's previously unchallenged technical authority. The Führer believes our construction should inspire as well as function, Speer says. He spent an hour discussing the aesthetic vision for these defensive works. Todt removes his glasses, cleaning them methodically. While I spent my morning calculating how to repair bomb transportation networks with inadequate materials, the unspoken competition hangs between them. Speer the artistic visionary, Todt the practical builder, both essential to Hitler's Germany, both vying for resources and influence. I need another 50,000 tons of concrete for the Atlantic Wall, Todt says, changing the subject. Your Berlin projects will need to release their allocation. Impossible, Speer replies smoothly. The Führer personally reviewed the construction schedule yesterday. The military situation is precisely why these symbols of Reich strength must continue. Speer interrupts. Civilian morale requires visible progress. Todt moves to his window, gazing out at Berlin. Albert, the spring offensive will fail without proper supply lines. The Atlantic Wall remains incomplete. These are engineering realities. Engineering isn't everything, Fritz. Speer steps beside him. The Führer understands the power of symbols. These monuments reassure the German people of our inevitable victory. Concrete memorials won't stop Soviet tanks. Speer studies Todt's face. You seem tired, old friend. The strain of your responsibilities. I'm concerned with practical matters. Todt replies. The war's outcome will depend on infrastructure more than ideology. A dangerously pragmatic view, Speer cautions. The Führer doesn't appreciate such thinking these days. The warning is veiled but clear. Speer has Hitler's ear daily, while Todt's influence comes from increasingly rare technical consultations. How is your family? Speer asks, his tone softening. Your son is studying engineering, yes, following the father's footsteps. For now, Todt doesn't elaborate on Karl's growing interest in combat service. My oldest boy talks of nothing but joining the Wehrmacht, Speer says. The youth's enthusiasm is inspiring. Enthusiasm doesn't build bridges or railways, Speer laughs. Still the practical engineer. This is why the Führer values you, Fritz. Your unshakable focus on the tangible. He moves toward the door, then pauses. Oh, I nearly forgot. The Führer mentioned your inspection flight tomorrow to the Eastern Front. He suggested I accompany you to discuss the aesthetics of the new command bunkers. Todt's expression doesn't change, but his hand tightens slightly on a pencil. The flight manifest is already confirmed. Technical personnel only. I'm sure accommodations can be made. The Führer was most insistent about the artistic elements. The implied override of Todt's authority hangs in the air. Speer smiles again, gracious in his small victory. Until tomorrow then. Shall we say 6 a.m. at Tempelhof? After Speer leaves, Todt stares at the architectural model still occupying his desk. With precise movements, he measures the structure's dimensions, calculating load-bearing capacities and material requirements. Even in his irritation, the engineer in him cannot help analyzing, improving. He makes several notes on the model's base, subtle adjustments that would preserve Speer's aesthetic vision while improving structural integrity. Professional pride overrides personal rivalry. Fräulein Hoffmann enters with the afternoon schedule. Shall I have her Speer's model returned to his office? She asks. No, Todt decides. Send these modifications to the construction team directly. Don't route them through Speer's office. That might cause difficulties, Herr Minister. It will save German lives if the structure is ever bombed. Todt replies. That outweighs protocol. He turns back to his desk, already refocusing on the endless logistics of empire. Behind him, Speer's grand vision sits, improved by Todt's practical adjustments, a physical manifestation of their uneasy collaboration in building Hitler's Germany. Confirm tomorrow's flight crew, Todt adds. Technical personnel only. If Herr Speer insists on joining, he'll need the Führer's direct order. The rivalry continues, but Todt knows it's ultimately futile. The Reich, like all empires, will eventually belong to the Speers, the visionaries who inspire, not the Todts who merely build. The door bursts open without a knock. Colonel Dorsch rushes in, his normally composed face flushed with urgency. Herr Minister, the Daimler bridge has collapsed. Todt looks up sharply from his desk. Which section? The main span. 3 panzer divisions are now cut off from supply lines. Todt rises immediately, reaching for the emergency response protocol document, kept in his top drawer. Casualties? Initial reports indicate at least 80 soldiers, 23 organization, 2 personnel, and Dorsch hesitates. Approximately 150 labor force workers. Todt's face reveals nothing, but his hand pauses momentarily over the document. When? 40 minutes ago. The field commanders are requesting immediate guidance. Todt moves with practiced efficiency, pressing the intercom. Fräulein Hoffmann, initiate Protocol 7. I need the Eastern Front infrastructure team and emergency response unit in the war room immediately. He turns to Dorsch. Causes? Unclear. The bridge passed inspection 3 weeks ago. Todt strides down the corridor, staff officers scrambling to make way. The ministry's war room is already filling with engineers and logistics officers when he arrives. Maps of the Eastern Front cover the central table, with the Daimler River, crossing now marked with a red X. Status report, Todt demands. Major Klinger, from field operations, steps forward. The central span collapsed during a heavy transport crossing. 2 panzer tanks, weighing approximately 60 tons each, were on the span simultaneously. The bridge was rated for 40 tons maximum per section. Todt responds sharply. Who authorized the simultaneous crossing? Uncomfortable glances exchange around the table. The panzer commander made a field decision, sir. They were under pressure to reach their position by nightfall. Todt turns to the technical team. Preliminary structural analysis. A senior engineer approaches with drawings. Based on field reports, the failure originated at the eastern support pylon. Todt examines the blueprints with intense focus. This doesn't match our approved specifications. The reinforcement pattern is entirely different. The room falls silent. Todt traces the altered design with his finger. Who modified these plans? After a heavy pause, another engineer speaks. Material shortages last month. Herr Minister, you signed a directive authorizing alternative construction methods where standard materials were unavailable. Todt's expression hardens as he remembers. The directive had been forced by impossible deadlines and dwindling resources, a compromise he'd reluctantly approved after military command refused to adjust their timetables. The substitution calculations were inadequate, he says finally. Who verified the load capacity? No one answers. The responsibility ultimately rests with him. The Reich's chief engineer, the man who signed the directive, prepare recovery and reconstruction options immediately. Todt orders. I want alternative supply routes identified within the hour. As the team disperses to their tasks, Todt pulls Dorsch aside. The complete casualty list. I want it on my desk as soon as available. Is that necessary, Herr Minister? The military will focus on their losses, and the labor, every name. Todt interrupts. German and non-German alike. Alone for a moment, Todt stares at the map, calculating the strategic impact. 3 divisions isolated, the spring offensive timeline compromised, and Hitler's certain rage when he learns of the failure. The telephone rings. Todt knows before answering that it will be the Führer's office. Todt speaking. The Führer demands an immediate explanation for the Dnieper disaster. Bormann's voice barks through the receiver. A full report is being prepared. Not good enough. He wants someone to blame. Todt's jaw tightens. The fault is engineering miscalculation based on material substitutions. The ultimate responsibility is mine. A pause on the line. That's not the answer he wants, Todt. It's the truthful one. Find someone else to blame or face his fury yourself. Bormann warns before hanging up. The war room refills with officers presenting options. Todt listens with clinical detachment as they outline pontoon bridges, alternative routes, airdropped supplies. An aide arrives with a folder. Preliminary casualty list, Herr Minister. Todt opens it, scanning the names. German engineers he personally selected, skilled workers requisitioned from occupied territories, conscripted laborers who never chose to build a bridge in a foreign land. Implement option 3. He instructs the waiting officer. Begin emergency construction immediately. I want a temporary crossing operational within 48 hours. Impossible with available resources. An officer objects. Nothing is impossible for German engineering. Todt responds, echoing Hitler's frequent refrain with subtle irony. Redirect materials from the Berlin Flak Tower project. Herr Speer will object. I'll handle Speer. Todt's tone ends all discussion. Execute the orders. As they disperse, Todt returns to the casualty list. 253 names, each representing a life ended because of a compromise he authorized. He will memorize every German name before reporting to Hitler, as is his duty. The foreign names, French, Polish, Russian, will receive no official recognition, but Todt commits them to memory as well, a private accounting of the day's true cost. The crisis meeting adjourns after 2 grueling hours. Todt remains in the war room alone, studying maps, until Colonel Dorsch returns with updated report. The emergency response teams are deployed, Herr Minister. Temporary pontoons will be in place by tomorrow evening, and the bodies? Recovery operations are underway. Todt nods, checking his pocket watch. I need 30 minutes of uninterrupted time. Hold all calls unless they're from the Führer himself. Of course, sir. In his office, Todt closes the door and loosens his collar, a rare concession to fatigue. From his desk drawer he removes a silver-framed photograph. Elsa, Karl and himself on vacation in Bavaria. Before the war transformed everything, he lifts the telephone receiver. Connect me to 1Z4721, please. While waiting for the connection, he studies his son's face in the photograph. 17 then, looking at his father with uncomplicated admiration. Now 19, with complicated ideas about duty and service. Todt residence, Elsa's voice answers. It's me, Todt says, his tone softening from the commanding timbre he's used all day. Fritz, we weren't sure you'd call. Karl's been waiting. Put him on, please. A moment passes, then his son's eager voice comes through. Father, are you coming home for dinner? Mother's made your favorite. I'm afraid not, Todt replies, regret genuine in his voice. There's been an incident requiring my attention. Another bridge? Karl guesses with the intuition of an engineer's son. Yes, structural failure or bombing. Todt almost smiles at his son's technical interest. Structural, unfortunately. Material compromises. I've been reading about alternative reinforcement methods in Professor Weber's journal. His theories about stress distribution might apply to field conditions. For a moment, they're just father and son discussing engineering principles. Todt feels the tension in his shoulders ease slightly. How are your studies progressing? He asks. A hesitation. Actually, father, that's why I wanted to see you tonight. I've been thinking about taking a leave of absence from the university. Todt's hand tightens on the receiver. For what purpose? To volunteer for active service. The Eastern Front needs an able man. Todt closes his eyes briefly. The Reich needs engineers more than it needs infantry, Karl. Your talents would be wasted in a rifle company. But father, my friends are all serving. Hans joined the Luftwaffe last month. Peter is already at the front. And how many bridges will Hans build? How many roads will Peter construct to bring supplies to the troops? Todt's voice sharpens. These are emotional decisions, not rational ones. It's about honor, Karl insists. I can't hide behind my studies while others fight. Todt hears his son's youthful idealism, the same dangerous fuel that powers the Reich's military ambitions. There is honor in building as well as destroying, Todt says more gently. Today I lost 23 engineers when a bridge collapsed. Their replacements can't be trained overnight. Every technical student who leaves for the front costs Germany its future. Silence follows. Todt can picture his son's expression, the stubborn set of his jaw, inherited from his father. At least consider the corps of engineers. Todt, if you insist on military service, do it where your education matters. Will you help me secure a position there? Karl asks, hope evident in his voice. Todt hesitates, torn between protecting his son and respecting his growing independence. I'll make inquiries, he concedes finally. Thank you, father. Elsa returns to the line. Will you be home tonight at all? Late if at all, Todt answers. The situation requires my oversight. A pause. You sound tired, Fritz. It's been a difficult day. Another pause. Longer this time. Their conversations have grown increasingly guarded. Things Todt cannot share fill the silence between them. The radio says our forces are advancing everywhere, she offers. Yes, he replies simply, unwilling to contradict the propaganda. Fritz, Elsa says suddenly, her voice lower, the Schmidt's son was killed last week. Eastern Front. Todt absorbs this news silently. They're neighbors for 12 years. I'll write to them, he says finally. Is it? Elsa hesitates. Is it going as well as they tell us? This dangerous question hangs between them. As Reich Minister, Todt knows exactly how the war progresses. As a husband, he must protect his wife from truths that could be considered defeatism. Engineering challenges remain, he answers carefully. Elsa understands his coded language. I see. Give Karl my love. Tell him we'll discuss his plans when I'm home. I will, Fritz. She stops herself. Yes. Nothing. Just be careful. The line clicks dead. Todt replaces the receiver and returns the photograph to his drawer. The momentary connection to his private life fades, replaced by the weight of his official responsibilities. Colonel Dorsch knocks and enters without waiting. Herr Minister, the Führer's office is on the line again. He demands a full briefing in person tonight. Todt rises, straightening his uniform. The brief respite ends, and Reich Minister Todt resumes his place in the machinery of war. Evening settles over Berlin as Todt's car approaches a nondescript office building in the government district. No flags mark this entrance. No guards stand at attention. His driver knows not to record this destination in the official log. Return in 90 minutes, Todt instructs, exiting the vehicle without his ministerial briefcase. Instead, he carries only a thin folder stamped with an innocuous administrative code, a cipher known to very few. Inside, a single receptionist nods Todt through without asking for identification. He proceeds to the elevator, inserts a special key, and descends to a sub-level not marked on the building's public plans. The secure conference room is already occupied when he enters. 5 men rise: Colonel Dorsch, Todt's most trusted deputy; Dr. Popfauer, Chief of Technical Planning; Weber, from Material Allocation; Schönleben from the Transport Division, and General Thomas from the Wehrmacht's Economics Office. No uniforms here, only civilian clothes. Gentlemen, Todt greets them, his voice lower than his usual official tone. Report status first, then analysis. Thomas begins. Fuel reserves are at 43% of reported levels. The discrepancy remains unacknowledged in official briefings. Steel production, Todt asks, 30% below the figures provided to the Führer. Weber responds, and quality is declining as we're forced to use inferior ores. The Atlantic Wall, Schönleben shakes his head. At current construction rates, we estimate completion would require another 18 months. The Führer expects it operational in 3. Todt absorbs this information without visible reaction, though each report confirms what he already knows, the growing gap between Reich propaganda and material reality. The bridge collapse today is symptomatic of our broader situation, he says finally. We're building on foundations of wishful thinking rather than sound engineering principles. He opens his folder, revealing an encoded message intercepted from Allied intelligence. The British assessment of our industrial capacity is more accurate than our own High Command's understanding. The men exchange glances, aware of the dangerous territory they're entering. The official fuel allocation for the spring offensive is mathematically impossible, Thomas states bluntly. The panzers will literally run dry halfway to their objectives. Can you present these figures to the Führer? Popfauer asks Todt. I've tried. 3 times. He dismisses them as defeatist thinking. Todt removes his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. He expects technical problems to yield to willpower. Engineering doesn't work that way, Weber mutters. No, it doesn't. Todt's voice hardens. Yet we continue implementing plans we know will fail. That makes us complicit in disaster. A heavy silence falls over the room. What they're discussing borders on sedition. What do you propose? Thomas asks carefully. First, realistic contingency planning. Todt indicates a map on the table. If, when the offensive stalls, these fallback positions must be ready. Prepare the logistics quietly, using maintenance budget allocations to avoid scrutiny. Dorsch makes notes. And the labor situation. We must preserve skilled workers at all costs. Redirect them from showcases like Speer's Berlin projects to critical infrastructure. List them under special technical classifications to prevent conscription. Speer won't accept that, Schönleben warns. Speer doesn't need to know. The paperwork will show they're being reassigned to special Führer projects. The men nod, understanding the deception required. Most critically, Todt continues, lowering his voice further. We need accurate data preserved outside official channels. The Reich is making decisions based on fantasy figures. When reality forces acknowledgement, someone must hold the actual facts. He distributes small notebooks with encryption keys, record true material stocks, production capacity, and completion timelines. Share only in this room. The door opens unexpectedly. Everyone freezes as Fräulein Hoffmann enters, her face tense. Forgive the interruption, Herr Minister. The Führer's office has called 3 times demanding your presence at the Reich Chancellery. Todt checks his watch. Inform them I'll arrive within the hour. Bridge collapse emergency protocols required my attention. When she leaves, Todt addresses the group with renewed urgency. Gentlemen, we walk a dangerous line. We are not conspirators against the Reich, but engineers facing physical realities that cannot be overcome by ideology. What if the Führer continues to reject the true figures? Thomas asks. Todt's expression darkens. Then we do what engineers have always done when leaders demand the impossible. We build what can be built, prepare for the inevitable failures, and try to minimize the human cost of others' delusions. He gathers his papers. This meeting never occurred. Continue your official duties as expected. Implement these contingencies discreetly. As they prepare to leave, staggering their departures to avoid attention, Weber asks one final question. Herr Minister, how long can we maintain this double reality? Todt pauses at the door. Engineering teaches us that all structures have breaking points. The laws of physics cannot be deceived indefinitely. He straightens his civilian tie, preparing to transform back into the public Reich minister. Our task is to ensure that when this particular structure fails, something remains to rebuild from the ruins. One by one they exit, returning to their roles in the Reich's machinery, carrying knowledge that could condemn them as traitors, or eventually mark them as the only rational men in a system built on impossible promises. The Chancellery meeting ends late. Hitler's rage over the bridge collapse had been predictable. Accusations of sabotage, demands for executions, refusal to acknowledge material shortages. Todt had absorbed the fury stoically, promised investigations, assured immediate repairs. The same performance he delivered countless times as the gap between Hitler's expectations and physical reality widened. Now, back in his office, the ministry building stands nearly empty. Only security personnel and the occasional dedicated assistant remain at this hour. Todt dismisses his aide with instructions not to be disturbed unless directly ordered by the Führer himself. Alone at last, he opens his private drawer with a small key kept on his watch chain. Inside lies personal stationery, not the official letterhead of the Reich minister, but simple paper bearing only his name. He selects a sheet and uncaps his fountain pen, a gift from Elsa on their 20th anniversary. For several moments he simply stares at the blank page. Then, with decisive strokes, he begins to write. To Adolf Hitler, Führer and Chancellor of the German Reich. Mein Führer, after long consideration, I find it necessary to tender my resignation from all positions within the Reich government. My decision stems not from lack of dedication to Germany, but from my professional assessment that, he pauses, weighing each word carefully. Even in a private draft, such thoughts are dangerous. Current construction and armament policies have diverged from physical and engineering realities in ways that cannot be overcome through will alone. As an engineer, I have built my career on acknowledging what is possible rather than what is desired. The material shortages are not temporary setbacks, but fundamental limitations that no amount of reorganization can solve. The Atlantic Wall cannot be completed to specifications with available resources. The Eastern Front transportation network cannot support planned offensives. These are not opinions, but mathematical certainties that I, as your chief engineer, can no longer pretend are surmountable obstacles. Todt removes his glasses, pinching the bridge of his nose. The words on the page could be considered treason in the current climate. Yet professional integrity demands their writing. I entered your service to rebuild Germany's infrastructure, a task I pursued with pride and dedication. The transition to war construction altered the nature of my work, but not my commitment to technical excellence. However, I can no longer in good conscience direct projects that engineering principles indicate will fail, costing German lives when those failures occur. Today's bridge collapse is merely one manifestation of a systemic problem. Todt thinks of his son Karl, eager to join the military. How many sons march toward objectives that Germany's industrial capacity cannot possibly support? How many fathers sign orders knowing the material reality behind them is a fiction? I remain dedicated to Germany's welfare and stand ready to serve in purely technical advisory capacities should you wish. But I cannot continue authorizing construction that professional integrity tells me is fundamentally unsound. With deepest respect for Germany, Fritz Todt. He reads the letter once, then again. Every word true, every sentence potentially fatal if found by the wrong eyes. The letter represents the final breaking point between the engineer's commitment to physical truth and the Reich official's obligation to support the regime's fantasies. Would resignation even matter? Would it change anything? Or would Speer simply replace him, implementing the same impossible demands with fewer professional qualms? The telephone rings, startling him from his thoughts. He quickly slips the letter back into the drawer before answering. Todt speaking. Herr Minister, Field Marshal Keitel requests your immediate presence at OKW headquarters. New intelligence about Allied bombing targets requires urgent defensive measures. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Todt hangs up and looks at his desk drawer. The half-finished resignation letter waits inside like a bomb, with a slow fuse. He locks the drawer, pocketing the key. The letter will wait. Perhaps tomorrow he'll finish it. Perhaps he never will. The momentary clarity that prompted its writing fades as duty reasserts itself. He puts on his coat, straightens his tie, and checks his watch. Another meeting, another impossible demand, another compromise between engineering truth and political necessity, the routine of his days. At the door, he pauses for a final glance at the locked drawer. Inside that small wooden space sits the only truly honest assessment of Germany's situation he has ever committed to paper, a truth too dangerous to share, too important to destroy. Tomorrow he flies to the Eastern Front. Perhaps distance from Berlin will provide clarity on whether the letter should ever reach Hitler's hands. For tonight, like so many technical facts that contradict the Reich's narrative, it remains safely contained, acknowledged, but unacted upon. Todt switches off his office light and steps into the corridor where his driver waits to carry him to the next crisis in an unending day. Military High Command headquarters buzzes with activity. Despite the late hour, officers move with the heightened tension that follows bad news from the front. Todt passes through security checkpoints, his ministerial credentials granting immediate access to restricted areas. Field Marshal Keitel greets him in the corridor outside the briefing room. Todt, thank you for coming at this hour. The situation has developments that require your immediate attention. Inside, senior Luftwaffe and Wehrmacht officers cluster around large map. Air defense charts cover one wall, showing Germany and occupied territories marked with concentric circles, the operational ranges of various Allied bomber groups. Todt recognizes General Jeschneck, the Luftwaffe Chief of Staff, and several members of the Strategic Defense Planning Committee. Gentlemen, Keitel announces, Reich Minister Todt has arrived. The officers straighten, offering the Nazi salute which Todt returns perfunctorily. General Jeschneck gestures to the air defense map. Herr Minister, we've received intelligence about a strategic stichik in Allied bombing priorities. British planning documents indicate your organization Todt projects have been elevated to primary targeting status. Todt studies the map, his engineering mind automatically calculating vulnerabilities. Which sectors specifically? all of them. Jeschneck points to the map where dozens of red markers indicate constructions. The Atlantic Wall fortifications, Eastern Front supply depots, bridge networks, fuel production facilities. Your construction signature is now being used to identify critical infrastructure. They've realized that destroying what you build cripples our ability to fight. Keitel adds, your efficiency has made you a target. Todt absorbs this information without visible reaction, though the implication is clear. His life's work is now being systematically targeted for destruction. Do we have specific intelligence on their targeting method? A Luftwaffe intelligence officer steps forward with a folder. Aerial reconnaissance photos show they're identifying organization Todt projects by their construction patterns. Your standardized bunker designs are particularly recognizable from the air. Todt examines the photographs. The officer is right. His efficiency-driven standardization has created distinctive patterns easily identified in reconnaissance photographs. We need to implement immediate camouflage protocols. Todt says, irregular covering structures, false construction sites to draw bombing away from critical projects. Resources for such measures are limited. A Wehrmacht kernel objects, more limited than replacing entire destroyed facilities. Todt counters, the material saved by proper camouflage will exceed the cost tenfold. He moves to the map studying the most vulnerable targets. The bridge network between Frankfurt and Cologne requires immediate attention. If these 5 crossings are hit simultaneously, Western troop movements would be paralyzed for weeks. General Jeschneck points to another sector. The Ruhr factories show particular vulnerability. Their output is already declining due to material shortages. And now bombs, Todt observes quietly. The compounding inefficiencies. For the next hour they conduct a methodical analysis of vulnerable infrastructure. Todt designates priority protection zones, balancing strategic importance against limited air defense resources. Every decision involves impossible trade-offs. Which facilities can be sacrificed if necessary, which must be protected at all costs. The concrete plants near Mannheim must receive additional flak batteries, Todt insists. Without them, Atlantic Wall construction will fall further behind schedule. The Führer has prioritized Berlin's air defenses, Keitel reminds him. Every available 88mm gun is being diverted to protect the capital. Political priorities versus strategic necessities, Todt murmurs, too quietly for most to hear. Keitel catches the words, his expression tightening. We all follow the Führer's directives, Todt. Of course. Todt returns to the maps, the momentary friction passing. We'll need to implement a rapid repair protocol for critical infrastructure. Mobile construction units positioned near vital targets, ready to rebuild within hours of bombing raids. He sketches a quick organizational chart on a notepad. Divert these reserve battalions from Atlantic Wall construction. The immediate threat to internal infrastructure now outweighs coastal defense priorities. Speer won't be pleased about reassigning his labor units. An officer comments, Speer doesn't command organization Todt. Todt replies, with uncharacteristic sharpness. Not yet, at least. The room falls momentarily silent at this reference to the well-known rivalry. Todt quickly redirects the discussion. I'll need complete air defense plans for all priority zones by 0600 tomorrow. My technical staff will work through the night reconfiguring camouflage protocols. General Jeschneck nods. And your flight to the Eastern Front tomorrow proceeds as scheduled. The supply route crisis can't wait. The briefing concludes with the distribution of responsibility assignments. As officers disperse, Keitel pulls Todt aside. Between us, Fritz, how bad is the infrastructure situation if these bombing plans succeed? Todt hesitates, weighing honesty against prudence. If they systematically target the network rather than individual sites, we could see cascading failures within 3 months. That bad? That predictable? Engineering isn't politics, Wilhelm. Some outcomes follow mathematical certainty. Keitel studies him. You should be careful expressing such views. I'm an engineer, not a prophet. I simply calculate structural breaking points. These days, Keitel says quietly, the difference may not matter. Berlin lies dark under blackout conditions as Todt's Mercedes navigates the empty streets. Dim blue headlights provide minimal illumination, enough to avoid obstacles while remaining invisible to Allied bombers. The night sky belongs to fear now. Tonight, Todt's regular driver has been replaced by an older man, Müller, who handles the powerful car with experienced hands. The usual military escort is absent at this hour. With so many urgent matters requiring attention, protocol has been relaxed. Todt studies a map spread across his lap, marking potential weaknesses in Germany's infrastructure with a red pencil. His handwritten notations cover the margins, tonnage requirements, material allocations, vulnerable junction points. Were you always a driver, Müller? Todt asks without looking up from his work. The question seems to surprise the man. No, Herr Minister. I was a bridge engineer before the war, specialized in railway spans. Now Todt looks up, professional interest peaked. Where did you study? Dresden Technical Institute, class of 19, a good school. Why aren't you working in engineering now? Müller's hands tightened slightly on the wheel. Shrapnel in my right leg, Kharkov sector. Limited mobility makes field work impossible, but not design work. Todt observes. The personnel officer felt driving suited my limitations better. Todt makes a note in the margin of his map. Report to Major Weber tomorrow. Tell him I've authorized your reassignment to the Technical Planning Division. Thank you, Herr Minister, Müller says, surprise evident in his voice. I didn't expect. The air raid siren cuts him off, its undulating wail slicing through the night. Searchlights activate across the city, beams sweeping the clouded sky. The bunker at the next corner, Todt instructs, already gathering his papers. We could try to reach the ministry, Müller suggests. It's only 10 minutes. Standard protocol, Müller. Even Reich ministers follow air raid procedures. The car pulls alongside a public bunker entrance, where civilians already stream down concrete steps. A warden recognizes Todt's official vehicle and hurries over. Herr Minister, we have a special section for officials. The standard civilian section will suffice. Todt interrupts, tucking his map case under his arm. Inside, the bunker presents a cross-section of Berlin's remaining civilian population, mostly women, children, and the elderly. They make way for Todt without recognition. In his simple overcoat without insignia, he appears as just another government bureaucrat seeking shelter. Todt sits on a bench against the wall, continuing to review his maps while the sounds of distant explosions filter through the thick concrete. Around him, children whimper, mothers whisper reassurances. Old men discuss where today's raid might be targeting. Tempelhof. I'd wager, says one elderly man sitting near Todt, the British want to stop all flights in and out. More likely the railway yards, his companion counters. They hit the Eastern Station last week. Todt listens silently. These ordinary Germans speculating about bombing targets while he carries the actual Allied targeting priorities in his briefcase. Another small absurdity in the growing gulf between public knowledge and official reality. A young mother struggles to calm a crying infant 2 benches away. The child's wails echo in the concrete chamber. Without conscious thought, Todt finds himself offering his seat to her, moving to stand against the wall instead. Danke, she says, too focused on her child to look closely at him. The raid passes. The all-clear siren sounds. People begin filing out, blinking as they emerge into the still dark city. Müller waits with the car exactly where they left it. As they drive on, new fires burn in the distance. Tonight's targets, the latest wounds to the city's infrastructure. Todt adds them to his map, calculating repair priorities, material requirements, workforce allocations. They pass a section of the Autobahn entering the city, one of Todt's first major projects. The achievement that caught Hitler's attention and launched his rise to power. Workers repair bomb damage to a bridge support, laboring under floodlights despite the blackout risk. I worked on that section, Todt says almost to himself. 1936. We completed it 2 months ahead of schedule. I remember the opening ceremony, Müller replies. You gave a speech about Germany's engineering future. Did I? Todt stares at his creation, now being frantically patched between bombing raids. That seems very long ago. They arrive at a massive concrete bunker, the Führer bunker complex, where tonight's final meeting awaits. Young soldiers stand guard, checking identification with meticulous care, even for a Reich minister. Wait here, Todt instructs Müller. This meeting may run late. Of course, Herr Minister. The driver hesitates, then adds, and thank you again. For the reassignment. Todt pauses, briefcase in hand. Germany needs engineers building, Müller, not driving officials between meetings. It's simple resource allocation. As he approaches the bunker entrance, Todt passes two young soldiers barely older than his son. They snap to attention, eyes forward, the perfect image of German military discipline. But their faces show strain, and their uniforms hang loosely on frames, thinned by rationing. Todt returns their salute, carrying his maps of a crumbling infrastructure into a meeting where no one will acknowledge the cracks spreading through the foundation of the Reich. Deep inside the concrete fortress, Germany's war leadership gathers around a massive oak table. Despite the late hour, no one shows fatigue. Fear of the Führer's unpredictable temper keeps them alert, regardless of the time. Göring's massive frame dominates one end of the table. Beside him sits Speer, impeccably dressed despite the hour. Various military commanders fill the remaining chairs. Bormann hovers near the empty chair at the head of the table, guarding access to the absent Hitler. Todt takes his assigned place quietly, nodding to colleagues. Before him lies a folder containing the technical reports he's prepared. Honest assessments wrapped in careful language. Difficult truths hidden behind engineering terminology that few present will fully comprehend. The Führer sends his regrets, Bormann announces. He will review our conclusions in the morning briefing. We are to proceed and prepare final recommendations. A subtle relaxation passes through the room. Without Hitler present, discussion might include at least some acknowledgement of reality. Göring speaks first. The Luftwaffe requires immediate priority for fuel allocations. The defense of Reich airspace cannot be compromised. The Eastern Front offensive takes precedence, General Halder counters. The Führer has made his priorities absolutely clear. And the Atlantic Wall construction. Speer interjects smoothly. The Führer was most specific about accelerating the timetable. All eyes turn to Todt. This is his domain, the impossible balance of insufficient resources against unlimited demands. Current material allocations cannot support all priorities simultaneously, Todt states, his voice matter of fact. We must make strategic decisions about which objectives take precedence. Speer smiles thinly. The Führer has already made those decisions, Fritz. Our job is implementation, not debate. Implementation requires physical resources, Todt counters, opening his folder. These charts show current production capacity against project requirements. The gap cannot be closed by administrative reorganization. He distributes graphs showing production trends, all pointing downward. Steel production is down 17% from last quarter. Concrete production cannot meet even 60% of current demands. Defeatist assessments help no one. Bormann interjects sharply. Engineering reality is neither defeatist nor optimistic, Todt replies. It simply is. The discussion degenerates into the familiar pattern. Demands for priority allocations, accusations of departmental inefficiency, suggestions for extracting more production through harsher labor policies. Todt listens, making occasional notes. After decades of engineering work, he recognizes a fundamentally unsound structure. The Reich's war machine is becoming precisely that, a machine consuming more resources than it can acquire, burning out its components faster than they can be replaced. A signals officer enters, handing a dispatch to General Halder. The general's face tightens as he reads. The Russians have broken through near Vyazma, he announces. 3 divisions are at risk of encirclement. A heavy silence falls. This is not in accordance with the official narrative of German invincibility. The Führer has anticipated this development, Bormann asserts quickly. It's part of the strategic plan to draw Soviet forces into a trap. Several officers exchange skeptical glances, but say nothing. The fiction must be maintained. The breakthrough makes the eastern supply routes even more critical, Hulda continues, turning to Todt. Your organization must accelerate road construction behind the lines. With what resources? Todt asks bluntly. The concrete and steel previously allocated has been redirected to the Atlantic Wall on direct orders from the Führer. Find alternatives, Speer suggests. That's why the Führer values your practical ingenuity, Fritz. Todt examines Speer's smooth, well-rested face. His rival has mastered the art of promising impossibilities with absolute conviction. Alternatives exist, Todt acknowledges. But they involve trade-offs in durability and capacity. Roads built with insufficient materials will fail under heavy military traffic. Then build them twice, Goering booms. German industry can overcome any material shortage through superior organization. Todt wants to explain that building the same road twice requires more resources than building it properly once. But he recognizes the futility. This room operates on political reality, not physical laws. The meeting continues for another hour. Decisions are made that ignore the facts Todt has presented. Resources are allocated that don't exist. Timetables are approved that cannot possibly be met. When Bormann finally distributes Hitler's latest special directive, demanding acceleration of all programs simultaneously, Todt accepts the document with outward calm. Inside, the engineer in him recoils at the fundamental impossibility of the orders. The Führer expects personal confirmation of implementation plans from each department head by 0900 tomorrow. Bormann concludes, as they gather their papers. Speer approaches Todt. You seemed unusually direct tonight, Fritz. Are you feeling well? Engineering facts don't change based on my health, Todt replies. But their presentation might, Speer suggests quietly. The Führer doesn't appreciate excessive focus on limitations. I'm aware. Your flight to the Eastern Front is early. You should rest. Speer's concern seems genuine despite their rivalry. These are difficult times for men who see too clearly. The warning is veiled but unmistakable. Todt nods acknowledgement. My technical assessment will be ready by morning, he assures Bormann, who watches their exchange with suspicious eyes. Leaving the bunker, Todt carries Hitler's impossible directive in his briefcase. Tomorrow he will fly east, bearing orders that cannot be fulfilled to men who cannot admit it. Midnight has passed when Todt's car finally stops outside his Wannsee villa. The house stands dark except for a single light in the study. Todt dismisses his driver with a nod, carrying his briefcase up the garden path alone. The door opens before he reaches it. Elsa stands in the entrance, her face showing the strain of a long day's waiting. You're later than you said, she observes without accusation. There was an air raid, Todt replies, handing her his coat. And then meetings ran long. There's always an air raid. There are always meetings. He doesn't contradict her. These days, their conversations exist in the narrow space between what cannot be said and what need not be said. Karl waited until 10, she continues, following him to his study. He was disappointed. Todt sets his briefcase on the desk. Did he mention the military service again? He's already written to the engineering corps, using your name. Todt sighs, loosening his tie. I'll speak with him tomorrow before I leave. Another inspection tour? Eastern Front. Supply route issues. Elsa moves to the cabinet, pouring a small glass of schnapps, a pre-war bottle, saved for increasingly rare moments of quiet. She hands it to him wordlessly. Thank you, Todt says, their fingers brushing in the exchange. An intimacy preserved from another life. Before Reich Minister Todt consumed engineer Fritz Todt. Will you sleep at all tonight? She asks. A few hours. The flight leaves at 6. Elsa hesitates, then speaks with the directness of a long marriage. You look ill, Fritz. This pace is unsustainable. Many things are unsustainable, he replies, a ghost of bitter humor in his voice. She studies his face, reading the exhaustion, the strain, the careful mask of the loyal Reich Minister slipping in the privacy of their home. Is it going badly? she asks quietly. The question hovers dangerously. To answer truthfully would burden her with knowledge that could be deemed seditious. To lie would violate the honesty that has sustained their marriage. Engineering challenges remain significant, he says finally. The same careful phrase he's used before. Elsa nods, understanding the code. I'll prepare your bag for the morning. When she leaves, Todt sits at his desk, removing a small, leather-bound journal from a locked drawer. Unlike his official logs, this private record contains his unfiltered observations, resource shortfalls, unsolvable contradictions, moral compromises. His testament to truths that cannot be spoken aloud. He writes briefly about the day, the bridge collapse, the camp visit, the impossible directives from Hitler. His pen moves precisely, the engineer's habit of accurate documentation persisting even in this most private record. A knock at the door interrupts him. Fräulein Hoffmann stands there, still in her work clothes despite the hour. Forgive the intrusion, Herr Minister. These just arrived from headquarters. Your flight orders for tomorrow. Todt accepts the envelope. You should have had them delivered in the morning, Fräulein Hoffmann. You need rest as well. The courier insisted they reach you tonight, sir. After she leaves, Todt opens the envelope. Standard flight authorization, but with a handwritten addition. Albert Speer has been added to the passenger manifest by direct order of the Führer. Todt places the orders on his desk. Contemplating this development, his rival will now accompany him to the Eastern Front, witnessing firsthand the gap between Hitler's expectations and frontline realities. Whether this represents opportunity or threat remains unclear. He makes one final note in his journal, then locks it away. Tomorrow's flight will at least provide time to think, suspended between responsibilities, between earth and sky. Perhaps clarity will come at altitude. In their bedroom, Elsa has laid out his traveling clothes. Beside them sits a photograph of Karl in his university uniform, smiling with the uncomplicated patriotism of youth. Todt touches the image briefly, remembering when his own belief in Germany's future felt equally certain. He prepares for bed with mechanical efficiency, his body moving through familiar routines, while his mind continues processing the day's unresolved problems. The bridge reconstruction, the labor camp conditions, the impossible material allocations. Did you finish your work? Elsa asks as he joins her in bed. A Reich minister's work is never finished, he replies, the official phrase covering the deeper truth. She reaches for his hand in the darkness. Then sleep while you can. Todt closes his eyes, knowing sleep will be elusive. Tomorrow's flight looms, another inspection, another report that will balance truth against expectation, another day of engineering compromises that violate his professional principles, but preserve his ability to function within the regime. In the quiet darkness, Todt's mind drifts to that first Autobahn project, clean lines stretching across the landscape built to last generations. The pure satisfaction of creation, unsullied by war's destruction. The memory carries him towards sleep. Outside, Berlin lies darkened against bomber threats. Engineers work through the night repairing today's damage. Factories produce with dwindling resources. The machinery of war continues its relentless cycle, and dawn approaches, bringing another basic day in the life of Fritz Todt, the man who builds the infrastructure of an empire even as he calculates its inevitable collapse.